And we are live. What's going on? YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn Live. It is your man, Coach Rowe. Today is Tuesday. I'd like to welcome you to another episode of The Men's Circle. I guess because it's a black background, I need to put the white one up. The Men's Circle. Man, so much to talk about tonight. This is going to be a pretty hot topic. Right now, it's just me and you, brother, but we're going to jump straight into this thing because there's quite a bit to go over. Tonight's topic is going to be on provisions. I always like to share what I mean by my topic, but before I share what I mean by the topic, I want you to introduce yourself, Brother Tim, and share your perspective on what the topic means to you.
Excellent. So Tim Rushing, longtime contributor to the first row in the men's circle. I gotta tell you, man, I like the new intro music. That has like a Midnight Love type vibe to it.
Hey,
Back in the day, BT, I like that. But the topic, it's the kind of the core of where we are as men that have, especially if we have families. It's if you're doing it and you're providing, ain't nobody can tell you nothing. It's a feeling you can't purchase. You know what I mean? It's like I'm taking care of mine. And when it's not, it's almost like the feeling of when I was a kid, I was poor. Like when you got to wear the same outfit a couple times a week and you hope nobody notices. It's kind of like got that vibe to it. So to me, it's the core essential job duty of the husband and the father, or whoever fills that role. If you're, depending on whatever it's 2024, so there could be a woman that fills that role in her relationship, whatever it be. But to me, it's the core essence of what we do because nothing else matters if you can't provide.
Yeah, no, nothing else matters if you can't provide. And that's
a great lesson, Dad. I'm starving.
Right. Anything less is uncivilized.
So that's a real good lesson, Dad. I'm shivering to death.
Yeah. I'm staying warm with my teeth. That's what they call that, chattering. For me, when I thought about this, I actually bumped this up in the schedule a little bit just because of some things that I was going through personally when it comes to being a provider. For me, provisions is always about provider. What are you supplying? And I like that you say as a husband, as a father, yes, but also like, what are you providing to yourself? And so for me, when I started thinking about provisions, I started thinking about like my personal health, right? Like, what am I providing my body in order to sustain good quality health? Like, am I providing it exercise? Am I providing it vegetables? Like, I just got done eating dinner right before we came on. And I was intentional about putting broccoli on my plate and also having some avocado for healthy fats with not as much chicken as I would normally eat. Like I sliced the chicken breast in half instead of eating a whole chicken breast. And then like getting potatoes, but not saturating them in butter and fats and stuff like that. So it's when I started thinking about this topic of provisions, initially I did go to like, what am I providing for my wife? What am I providing for our kids? What am I providing for my legacy, right? But then I immediately tried to shift that fulcrum to where I started focusing on what am I providing for me? And not in some kind of selfish way, but in order to have the life that I want to have later on in life. Like I want to have my mobility later on in life, right? As I age, when I'm in my 70s and 80s, I still want to be able to get around physically. And in order to do that, that means I have to do things that are going to help foster that. Now, does that mean that I'm guaranteed to be able to move around? No, but at least I'm doing the things that are going to give me better odds at having the ability to
control the controllable.
Right. Exactly. So that's when I started thinking about this topic. That's where I kind of landed. And then after I landed there, I started going back and forth between, external and internal, external and internal. So with that, I want to start off with this first question for you. When you think about provisions, what do provisions look like for you?
So I gotta tell you, still kind of blowing my mind what you just said, because it's really funny how we forget about ourselves a lot in that equation. Like the thought of me, when I looked at the question, I never thought about anything about me. Like when I looked at when you set the topics and everything and then what we want to talk about, the thought of providing for myself never occurred. And it's just
Never
interesting how
crossed your
that
mind.
was never crossed my mind at all. So now I got to kind of recalibrate my answer because maybe you've altered what that looks like for me. But I'll tell you what my thoughts are. To me, it's provisions are, it's kind of like the core necessities of life: food, water, shelter, love, purpose, educating people. Are you providing support emotionally, spiritually? So the provisions is, what are you providing in all those facets, not just, okay, here's $200, this will take care of you, here's my provisions for the week that I
Right.
have to pay for. It's more than that. It's what are you giving that maybe you can't pay for. So to me, that's the prongs that lay into them. But now I'm thinking, dang, all right, what have I done for me? How am I going to provide for me? Because if I don't take care of me, then how is me going to take care of him?
Right.
So you bring up some interesting things with that.
It's funny because it's hard to think about what provisions for yourself look like, right? But then we do this kind of sometimes, I would say naturally. We have, like, when we were kids, and I packed my lunch a lot of the time to come to school. I would know I need a sandwich, a bag of chips, a juice box, or I need to rinse out my thermos to make sure I have my He-Man thermos ready to go. Like, I knew what those provisions looked like for the day. And that was just really for half the day, just the school day, not the rest of the day. I didn't pack my dinner and everything else in there. But when I really started thinking about what provisions look like, I started thinking about how we determine, like, we could use diet, for instance, how we determine whether or not we're going to eat like a fatty food or a healthy food. And when I started thinking about this topic, provisions, what was interesting that jumped out to me is I was at the gas station. I tell you, I have thoughts everywhere, but I was at the gas station specifically, and I was pumping gas. And at the gas station, I was at Costco. So there's two options of gas that you can put in your car, but it's all unleaded. But I started thinking about other gas stations, how they have ethanol and they have diesel, and then they have Supreme, and they have all these different types of gas that you can put in your car. And I thought to myself, we are very critical about the type of gas that we'll put in the car. We will only put the type of gas that the car says it takes. If I have an unleaded type of car, fuel vehicle, I don't go and put diesel in it because that will mess the car up. If I have a diesel engine, I don't go and put fuel in it or unleaded fuel in it because that will mess the car up. We're very, hey, this is what it needs to be. And we don't question it, and we don't deter or defer away from it, or
Deviate.
What is the word?
Deviate.
Deviate. Thank you. I was like, defer? That's something, but that
detour,
ain't
like taking a detour, deter. Yeah.
we don't.
You could use that too.
Away from what is recommended and what is mandatory for the vehicle. But when we think about ourselves, and we think even just in the form of diet, we put all kinds of stuff into this machine called our body, right? We'll put, Crisco lard, we'll put Taco Bell, we'll put healthy foods, we'll put unhealthy.
9, what is that?
Right. We'll put whatever we decide to put into it because our bodies don't react as fast as a car would react. And because of that, sometimes when it comes to planning our provisions and things that we need in a diet, we don't get the essential nutrients and ingredients that we need to get for the week so that our bodies, our vehicles, our personal physical vehicles can run at their optimal levels. And I don't mean just like being overweight. Yeah, you can be overweight or underweight, but there's certain chemicals that can enter your body that can start to impact your mind. And when you start thinking about, at least for me, when I started thinking about what provisions look like to me, a lot of that was a mental game. It was like, my provisions that I am setting up are of such that later on down the road, I won't have to work. it's not just the money that I'm saving, it's the mindset that I'm adopting to do that. And so every time I start to just randomly start spend money, I have to stop myself and say, wait, what do these provisions down the road look like? If I'm spending $10,000 a month down the road, it's going to be probably maybe $100,000 left, and I'm not going to be able to live off that for the rest of my life. So then that means I'm going to have to work again. What do those provisions look like? So for me, I'm finding the more that I think about provisions, I'm finding it has less to do with the physical and more to do with the mental capacity or the mental preparation that I am setting to set the stage or the foundation for the things that I do want, whether they're physical or mental in the future.
I like that. It's funny because the will it takes to make decisions and choices like that, because it's a real easy to make that decision for the. It's funny because you think about it now and you see it with like the newer generations. They call it short attention span, but they need to be satisfied quicker. You know what I mean? And being able to go counter that, knowing like you ever like I've seen the studies where they were like they have the kid in the room and they're like, don't eat the cupcake while we're gone. And if the kid doesn't eat the cupcake, they get a whole goddamn cake to themselves as like a reward because they had the willpower to wait for the better down the road. Right. And then you'll see most kids, they just eat that cupcake and they're like, oh, well, I guess forget that. I guess I missed out on that big cake. Oh, well.
I got the cupcake.
You know what I mean? It's funny because like, to use your gas station analogy, like you go and you get you buy a soda from the gas station. That thing, as small as it is, costs as much as the 2-liter at the grocery store. Right. Because it's that, because it's convenient. You had to have it now, you know. So it's really funny how you're saying these things because it's to go counter to what everything. It seems like it's accelerating us, faster satisfaction rate, faster results, faster this, faster that. And to be able to have the patience, and I think that's the key word, the patience and the will to go counter that. That's tough because everybody else around you is doing the counter.
Everyone else around you is winning right now.
Yeah.
Right now. They got money right now. And I mean, you would think about the neighborhood we grew up in when it comes to that, you know, instant gratification. We could have been out on the block moving weight and had money in our pockets. We all chose to go and get little $5, $6 an hour.
We'd be fighting. Yeah, we'd be fighting for top bunk right now, but hey.
Right. It's like, you know, you can take the quick route, but one of my business mentors, he would always say fast doesn't last, but slow is for show. Like consistency. And really when it comes to what provisions look like, when you think of like a granary, right, that has an abundance of food supply for a long period of time. Like you might stock your granary for the entire winter because you're not going to have access to food in the winter back in the day, right? Provisions look like consistency. They look like somebody who consistently followed a process, consistently prepared, consistently got their provisions together, right? So that way, at the end of the day, when it came time to consume those provisions, they were there. It reminds me of that cartoon. I don't remember. I know there was a fox. Maybe it was Porky Pig in it. I can't remember. But there was this like either a flea or a rat or something. I can't remember. But this dude was like, I think Porky was working his farm the whole summer long, harvesting, grabbing stuff. And, you know, the fox is on his porch and he's just like, working can wait. This is paradise. Having no work to do. And then all of a sudden the winter just blew in. Like it was like in the same scene of him singing, the winter came in and all of a sudden the opportunity to plant and to harvest and all those things was gone. And all he had was like I think a can of beans, and he had to fight the rat for the can of beans, and the rat won. So
I remember they were fighting on the one little bean. I remember that.
Right. So it's like you think about when I think about what do provisions look like, really provisions looks like preparation, both mentally and physically, but it has to start with a mental game for me. It has to start with a mental game because if my mentality isn't right, I think about the last like 5 years that are actually almost getting ready to be 7 years. It's a little over 6 years that I've been in Utah. I think about that and I think about how much my life has changed. And one of the things that I was able to see, I love this that Google does this on their photo album. They do these memories, right? And so they sent me this memory, and it was like, okay, this was you 6 years ago in Utah. And it was a picture of me in my apartment, my first apartment by myself. Um, and it was like there was no furniture, there was no nothing. All I had was like a TV, and I don't think my couch had even been delivered yet. Um, but I looked at that picture and it was like, man, when I moved to Utah, I came with a carload of stuff, not a U-Haul load, a carload of stuff. And since then, um,
Not even a big car. Chevy Malibu of stuff.
right. A mid-sized carload of stuff. But since then, my life has been populated with abundance. And I think about the mentality when I got to Utah. It wasn't, oh, I'm a ball out, because I made a lot more money. My payment on my rent on my apartment was under $1,000. So I had an immense amount of disposable income that I could have just blew on whatever I wanted to blow it on. And I intentionally said, you know what? I'm not going to blow this money. I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it. I'm going to do some things here and there, but those things will be things that I saved to do. And in doing so, I look 6 years later and it's like, man, I went from an apartment to a townhome to buying a townhome to buying a condo to selling a condo to buying a condo to buying a condo. And it's just like those things happen because of the discipline of behavior that I was in that mindset to say, hey, I want to have provisions, in this case, finances, when opportunities arise. And so every time an opportunity arose to get another property, the finances were there. Even as late as the last house that my wife and I just moved into, the finances were there, and they were there because even when I went from making a lot of money where I was at to making even more money, it was like, yeah, I'm still going to live that lifestyle that I've been living. And it put us in a position to where even in the midst of being laid off, we had the finances to still secure another home in a space where a lot of people weren't purchasing homes. And so I think about that when I think about what provisions looks like for me. I start thinking about all the preparation, all the mental work that has had to be done in order to set up a foundation, or in order, I guess, to set up a granary capable of holding what I actually want to have provisions for.
Yeah, I like that, because it's interesting when you say that, because think about, because of how you were when you got laid off, which usually be a lot of people's panic button, like worry, 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 worry. Being because of your discipline, you were able to still be, no, I'm gonna be selective with the next role I have because I'm not desperate. And I think
Right.
what you're really hitting on is how we are as human beings. We're very much like animals. Like, give us a treat, for show us what we did, we'll keep doing that behavior. And what you were able to do is you were able to train your mind that if you show that you're doing something for a long term, and then you get that taste of that success and then you're able to connect those dots. It's because I planned. It's because I stocked my granary, like you said, and I took my time and I was disciplined, that I was able to accomplish such. So when it goes time to go to that discipline well again, it's
Right.
easier for you to do because you condition your mind to say, good things come when I do this. Trust me. And you trust yourself more. Few
Right.
people have that ability. Not that ability. Everybody has that ability. Few people have pushed themselves to test that, so they don't have that reward. So it's interesting that you were able to kind of tap your mind
Yeah.
and program it to what, like, now more long-term rewards, those taste better than that quick snack. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
Whereas a lot of society, those Oreos sound really good, and you're like, but if I make these cookies myself, I can get a nice thick, chocolate chip, and it's way better than that Oreo.
Right.
Because you're okay. There's gonna be some hard work that goes into it, but it's gonna be worth it, and you've shown yourself that. So I think that's kind of like the testament to, if you were to just hold off
Mm-hmm.
and be patient,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. So that's pretty cool. But
This
that's the upside to that. And
right.
and with provisions, to me, it's funny because I think about that Porky Pig cartoon, and it's the other side. He was begging Porky, like, hook me up, and it's like, and Porky's just like, I remember, like, Porky's just walking around his farm like he doesn't even exist. And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
come on, man, let's do that. And he's just like, because he had told him, kind of like Game of Thrones style, winter's coming, but in a funny cartoon way. Like, hey, you sure you're not, you're good for the winter, and yeah, I'm good, I'm fine. And then that cold breeze blew in on him real quick.
Right.
Uh, but I think about it like that, and that's what, when you take stock like that, provisions does feel like consistency, but like things that are consistent, what rubs people and sometimes could jade people is consistency is always taken for granted. And
True.
when you build a consistency, you create an expectation. So now it's like, oh, I ain't got to do that. He'll have enough for the farm for the winter for all of us. He'll take care of this, and you'll start seeing stuff like that in your family and your relationships. Like, why I gotta pay? Why are we splitting this bill evenly? This dude makes more money than he should be just covering the bill. And it's like, well, that's not how that works. You still got to cover your piece. So now I got to get punished because I took care of mine.
Right.
So it's funny how that works, and it's funny how when we talk about these things, how the roots of it, if you bury it down long enough, you hit the same kind of roots. You hit the accountability, you hit the discipline, you hit the willingness, you hit all those things. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's just really, like, the more we talk about this, it's kind of messing with me a little bit. Like, how is, like, it almost feels like, like how you see these, like, scientists, and they come up with, like, a big discovery, and they're like, the data's all lining up. It feels like kind of like that sometimes, like, oh crap, all this stuff is linked.
Right. Linked right to each other.
The answers are all in front of us, but nobody can see it, But that's where this conversation is kind of taking me right now. But, like, the whole thing, like, what does it look like? And it's funny because what it looks like is, it looks uneventful.
Right. Very unassuming.
Yeah, it looks like, oh, because if you do it right, it just looks like stuff just functions. You know what I mean? Like, oh, that's how it's supposed to work. Like, me and my wife were having this conversation, I want to say last night. We were talking about, like, poor people food.
Mm-hmm.
And how our kids have no understanding of, they don't have no idea what that stuff will look like. And we were talking about, like, government cheese back in the day, and how those were the best cheese sandwiches. And our kids were like, what are you talking about, government cheese? Like, well, when you were poor and you were on welfare, the government gave you a block of cheese. And
Right.
they're like, what? Like, it's blowing their mind. And then we were talking about, like, you're poor when you drink Flavor Aid instead of Kool-Aid. Because
Yep.
Flavor Aid was like 6 cents a pack back in the day, and Kool-Aid was like 15 cents. And you'd go and see somebody drinking Kool-Aid, like, who's this rich dude drinking Kool-Aid? How this dude got the Kool-Aid man in his cabinet? I'm over here with the kids with the big straw, Flavor Aid.
Yeah.
And then we were talking about, like, things like deviled ham and corned beef and hash in the can, and there's, like, chicken and a biscuit crackers, and it's like, our kids have no recollection of that. And
At all.
to them, the provisions look like what it's supposed to be, because that's, like, we've created expectation. They don't know what it's like to be adding water to the shampoo, sometimes the ketchup,
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They
Getting
don't know
all
what that
that you
looks
can
like.
out of the bottle.
They're like, hey, I'm not a moisturizer. You know what I'm saying? Because it's
like
just
moisturizer. Better get that bar of ivory soap. Call it a day.
I had a Craig's dad from Friday moment. This was a while back. One of the kids, I think it was Noah, he poured some cereal and he realized there was no milk, and I was like, "You better put some water in that damn shit." But you know, I just had like a little moment. I caught myself. I was like, I didn't have Kraft macaroni cheese. I had the white box that said macaroni and cheese. Cereal. I didn't have, you know, Cocoa Pebbles. I had Cocoa Roos. You know what I'm saying?
Cocoa
And it's
rules.
like my kids look at this stuff, they think it's like a joke. And that's the is when you're good at providing it, it gets taken for granted. And it
Right.
looks like how it's uneventful. This is how it's supposed to be. That usually is a sign that you've been a pretty good provider.
Consistency.
Consistency, right? That's the way it's always been. I expect this. And the consistency turns into expectation, turns into you being taken for granted. So it's tough as a provider.
Yeah, really quick, we got somebody who jumped in. Big Brother Almighty, Damian Rowe. What's going on, author?
Salute, salute, salute. What's good, young man?
You know, just here having this circle as always on every other Tuesday.
You know, it's out here in Cali, it's dinner time, man. So I'm loving these nuggets I'm hearing on the show.
Anytime I could get called a young man, that's a good day.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Speak life.
What did you have to add to the conversation, brother?
You know, I really like what you guys are saying so far. I joined in maybe 5 minutes or so after, but been listening ever since. And I really can't say I disagree with anything you guys are talking about. Especially, you know, I'm always amazed when I hear you speak, Billy, because, you know, being your big brother, I've been so blessed to literally see your journey. And when you speak about your journey, you always come from a place of humility. It's never like, look what I did, look what I got, look how I'm rocking, look how many commas I got. You know what I'm saying? It's always coming from a place of humility. And I think as fathers, as leaders, as providers, we can't expect those in our household, including our spouse, including our children, we can't expect them to come at us from a place of respect and humility until they see us as leaders respect the process that we had to go through to get to this humble point. You know, one thing I always find myself talking to some of my friends about whenever we're discussing, you know, my time in the music business when I was with Capitol Records. And, you know, today is Robert Townsend's birthday, actually. So I hit him up on Instagram and gave him a very kind birthday greeting. And in that greeting, I let him know that all these years later, I let him know how grateful and how blessed I still am to look back over my shoulder in my past and see that I was this aspiring kid, you know, back in the day, who got blessed with an opportunity to be cast as a principal actor in one of his productions. You know, so that was my birthday greeting to him was, hey, you know, thanks for the opportunity of a lifetime. When you saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, you saw and believed in me as a young kid trying to make it, and you cast me in Sweet Home Chicago, you know? And
Right.
that just goes to show you, man, like sometimes people they only see the end result of the good. They don't see that during that same period of time, I was a starving actor, you know, like who didn't have a headboard for my bed.
Right.
They didn't
Like
see
you
that.
come out to Utah, no headboard.
Yeah, exactly. Like they see you on TV or they hear you on the radio or they see you on a interview on a talk radio show or something like that, but they don't see that you have no furniture.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that's for me where the humility comes in, is because you're looking at a bigger picture. Failure and quitting is never an option.
Right. You know, I like that though, because you're looking at a bigger picture. What someone would perceive as failure is not a failure to you. Like
Not
I
at all.
actually remember when I was living in Utah, or when I was living in my apartment in Utah, and I had I didn't even have a bed frame. I just had the bed springboard, or the spring box spring, and then the mattress on top. That's all I had. I had blankets and stuff, but that's all I had. And I remember I was listening to this, somebody was talking online, and they were like, the problem is a lot of you women are out here messing with men who don't even have a bedroom set. And I stopped and I was like, I had to think, how did I want to take that? Did I want to take the fact that I didn't have a bedroom set as a failure to me? Or was the fact that I didn't have a bedroom set, was that intentional in regards to where I was truly trying to get to? Number one, I knew I wasn't going to stay in the apartment very long. So it was like, I don't want to have to move a whole bedroom set. So I'll wait. And then it was like, and who am I going to get this bedroom set to impress? And if that's what impresses you about me is, oh, he has a really nice bedroom set, I don't want to be with you anyway. So it's interesting to hear that, and it kind of leads into this next question that I have. Tim, did you have something you wanted to say before I move?
It's about where you're at in your progress, because is your end result a bedroom set? I don't understand. Like, have you arrived because you got a bedroom set? Like, so it's just interesting where people measure, and when you think about it, usually people that like to measure themselves against others in a lower light, that's just the one hurdle they may have over them. Like, they're, oh, I got a bedroom set and I have furniture, so that's what I'm going to put out there as acceptable because that's what I got.
Right.
So,
but it's from rent to center, rent to own. And
right.
You've been paying on it for 52 years.
Right. And it could be yours in the year 2082. You know what I mean? But
who's really going to put 120-inch rim on their car at a time?
Right.
But hey, when they repo them, they take them all at once. But that's just the thing that sticks out to me is I've heard a quote, the comparison's the thief of joy. And that's kind of where that kind of hits home with that, is like, I don't like when people say stuff like that. I don't, if now it all depends on the motivation, right? Like if you're just bumming it, you know that in your heart. Like if you
Right.
know you don't have a goal set, and it's not a means to an end. You're just kind of loafing around, and that comment probably gonna hurt you. But if you got, hey, look, bedroom set, I got bigger things on my mind, then that comment's gonna blow right past you like a breeze. You know what I mean? So
Right.
that's kind of where my mind went. That's all I wanted to get out. But go ahead.
Cool. That takes me into the next question, is especially as men, right? This is something that I feel us as men, we are measured, our worth is measured by what we can provide. And you can see that in the dating world, where it's like, oh, he didn't take me on a sophisticated enough date. You can see that in the professional world, where it's like, oh, well, what are you? If you go into a conversation and it's like, well, what are you? Well, I'm the janitor. It's like, oh, you're not anybody of substance. You don't make enough, or you don't have enough clout in this building to really make a difference, and people will measure you on that. And so my question is how are provisions attached to our worth as men, and how do we get out of the cycle of allowing people to establish what our value point is based on what we can provide?
You want to go first?
I think, Billy, you and I might have talked about this right around the time Modern Day Mentor came out, because I specifically remember us having a discussion about value and about worth. And one thing that I'm always very adamant about is like from a self-esteem point of view, right? When you understand what your value and your worth is, you never allow any person, any circumstance, any condition to dictate how you move when you know what you bring to the table. So many times I was one of those people who determined or looked at or evaluated my value based on what people had around me, right? And ironically, some of the very things that I felt like I didn't have at a given point in my life that other people around me had, so many of those people who had those uh, material things, many of them lost it.
Mm.
You see what I'm saying? So the reality is, no matter what we think we need from like a material perspective, just as quick as we got it, it can all be gone in a heartbeat for whatever reason, right? And going back to what you guys were talking about before I came on, when you are a good leader for your family, when you're a good role model for your family, and your mindset is sharp like a double-edged sword, your level of discipline is on such a different level that many of the people around you in your own circle can't always understand how you move,
Right.
because your discipline is so on point. And like I tell my students all the time, don't chase the bag, because chasing the bag is a mindset. When you chase the bag and that becomes the value you put on the bag, you will do anything to get the bag. You will compromise your morals, you will compromise your belief system just to get the bag so that you can publicly say, look what I got.
I got the bag.
But if you flip your mentality around and you chase success, a disciplined mind understands the value in when you chase success, the bag will come by default.
Right.
So do you want to work smart or do you want to work hard?
Right. Well, do you want to work grimy or do you want to work with integrity? Really, because
There
that's
it
what it
is.
comes down to. When like you said, when you're chasing, when your pursuit, and the only way I could put this is when your pursuit is showmanship, right? You're going to do whatever it takes to be the star or be in the limelight of the show. When your pursuit is a specific objective, then you start quickly weeding out the things that you would not be willing to do to get to said objective. I when I think about like my worth, and this is where another part of this particular conversation came up for me at when I was in the midst of being laid off, right? And my wife would probably agree with this. I had a moment where I was just kind of like down, even though I was like, I feel good. I feel like there's a job around the corner. I know I have a skill set. I know I'm intelligent. I know that me being laid off really had nothing to do with me directly. Even though I knew all those things, there was this moment where it's like, I'm the primary breadwinner in our house. And me not having income coming in puts our family at an extreme disadvantage. And there was this worthiness, right? This worthiness of my manhood feeling like it was being tested. But one of the things that my wife told me, she was like, babe, don't worry, we got it. Like, even if you don't get this job that you're applying for and we have to go a little while, number one, we have the funds to go a little while. Number two, I got us. And it is hard when you grow up in a society that says you have to be a man up, suck it up, you got to get it done, and it all falls on you. It's hard. It makes it difficult to partner with your wife or with your spouse in those times where it's like, but wait a minute, I'm supposed to be the man, and I need to man up. Well, the reality is going back to what you said in the beginning of the show, Tim, controlling the controllables. Did I apply to jobs? Yes. Did I interview for jobs? Yes. Did I get a job? Yes. So I was controlling what I could control, but in that moment, where there's additional stressors of, okay, well, where is this money going to come from to pay for this house we just got? There is a sense where your worthiness is being tested, like in the aspect almost, and it didn't get this deep, but in the aspect of thinking like, I am your husband and I cannot provide for us. Damn, did you marry the wrong person? Right? Like, sorry about that. It looks like I'm gonna let us down.
DNA.
Yeah.
I was unsuccessful this week hunting. We're starving, and I failed you. I couldn't give you. I didn't come through with the elk, so we could eat. You know,
Right.
That's it. That's pre-programmed in our DNA. But go ahead, continue.
No, it is, but it goes back to what you said. Is provisions looks like consistency. I am easily, by far, consistently employed. By far, consistently employed. I am by far a person who is going to hustle, who is going to grind to get whatever he needs to get done, by far, consistently. But in that single moment of, and that inconsistent moment compared to the consistency, it's like, dang, did I let us down? And I guess now I'm thinking about a conversation that my wife and I had today, where I was saying, she had said, we're blessed. I sent her, Google again sends us these stories, these pictures, and I sent her some that was like a collage of different places that we've hiked and all that stuff. And she said, we're really blessed. And I said, it's easy for us to see that when we zoom out and we're looking at the picture. But sometimes when we're zoomed into those moments, when we're having arguments or we're not agreeing or we're going back and forth about something, it doesn't feel like we're blessed. And that's really, I'm thinking, is my solution to how our provisions are attached to our worth as men. Instead of simply looking at the thing that we can provide, that elk that we're providing today, zooming out and looking at the consistency and saying, hey, look, the 51 out of 52 weeks I brought home an elk. Is today the fact that I'm hungry, we're hungry, we're not going to eat as good as we normally eat, but that means, going back to what you said about the kids, that means that I have provided a consistent environment for you to know that there is something different. You're not always starving. This is not the status quo. What do you guys think?
I just want to say, like, the analogy, I love Damien's analogy of the showmanship, right? Because when you think about it, like when you if you're just focused on chasing a bag, morals kind of go out the window. And to piggyback on your analogy, like if you want to star in the show and you're the understudy, you'll trip the headliner as they go down those steps. You know what I mean? I'm going to star in the show. But if your focus is I want to be the best actor I can be, and you hone and train that skill, then you'll get the result in the right way.
Right.
You get what I mean?
Nancy Kerrigan.
Right. So you'll if you put in the work and you get better, the cream always rises to the top. You'll show eventually. But yeah, to me, I think with that, what you really honed in on with that, like that moment of vulnerability, like, hey, I'm the provider, now I'm laid off, and you have that gasp. I think that's a good thing that you had that feeling, because that just shows you how out of whack and abnormal that is. Think about how many bum ass people you talk to that they change jobs all the time, and it's like, whatever, I got fired, whatever. You know, and they have no concerns about it. But to answer the initial, now to get to the point where we're talking about the question, how is it attached to our worth as men? For nearly all men, it's our currency, man. And that's a good thing and that's a bad thing for both genders. For women, they may fall in love with what you could provide, so now they got to tolerate what's attached to that if you're not a good man. He provides for me, he takes care for all my stuff, but he sleeps with every woman in town. He provides for me, he's a good man, and he's really good with his hands. Nobody's messing with me because he'll beat him up. And then he's violent. When you get on his nerves, he beats you up too. So now you're dealing with what's attached to what those provisions are. When you're a good man, that's a good thing because you provide, and now they're attached to a good man. But a lot of men that know that they're good providers, there's a lot of them out there that know that, hey, this is how it is. You could either accept it or don't, and they leverage that. And really, it's our currency and it's also our equity division. So
Can you distinguish between those two?
I'll tell you. So the equity is how long that lasts, right? So if you have a good relationship with somebody and you're known to be the provider, what happens when something bad happens? You're no longer providing. How much equity do you have built up before I start looking for a better provider? You know what I mean? What does that actually look like? I'll give you some of mine. In my household right now, I am the breadwinner, the primary breadwinner. However, it hasn't always been that way. It's probably flip-flopped a good amount of times in our 16, almost 17 years together. Where initially I was the breadwinner. She was driving a car she was embarrassed to be seen in. But the cool thing about her is I watched her hustle and I watched her grind. Like, she had big aspirations. She didn't give a damn about fixing up the car and spending her money on that. She had bigger sets, bigger visions. And then I was so unhappy in my role, I had to change careers. So I ended up taking a pay cut and moving out because it was such a morally decomposing environment I was in. And she was the breadwinner and never once held that over me. Never once was like, okay, now the golden rule, he who has the gold make the rules. So now everything's my way. Nothing like that. You know what I mean? And then there's been times where that's flip-flop. And for the last few years, it's probably been that way where I just happened to really luck into a great company culture, career, and all that stuff. But there may be a time where she does that. And she's more educated than me. I'll admit it. She has better, if you put her on paper, she looks better than me. She might get an opportunity where she's the primary breadwinner. But we each built up that equity with each other when we know that if that person's down, they ain't going to be down for long. That's not his nature. He doesn't stay down. She doesn't stay down. And that goes along to what you're saying. That's why your wife was so confident, because she sees it in you. If it didn't bother you, she'd probably be more concerned. But she sees that as bothering. She's like, oh, if he's worried about it, it'll take care of itself.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's going to be all right because he always has been. And he always will be.
And I'm going to step out on faith and piggyback on what Tim just said, because I could say the same thing to him about his wife. Exactly what he said about you. And why your wife felt that way and how she came at you that way to let you know, babe, I got you, is because both of you guys have strong women, right? And the thing how you can identify a strong woman who is that when you have a woman who understands her role. You understand? When you have a woman who understands her role, I'll give you an example. I like to, whenever I'm talking about topics like this, I always like to give like a real world, like day-to-day example, and then like a spiritual example. So there's always a contrast and comparison, right? So the Bible says that the husband is the head of the wife as Christ is the head of the church. So even if both of your wives make more money than you, because she understands her role, she's not flexing on you like that, because she understands that no matter how much more money than you she makes, she understands that you're still the head, and she respects you as such, and she's not going to overstep her bounds. And another thing that's important about women understanding their roles so that we can thrive in our position as men and providers is that women understand that they are the help. If I'm in a relationship with somebody and she's constantly praising me for my leadership ability, but never giving me the opportunity to lead, then we have a problem. We have a disconnect. But as long as your woman is allowing you to be that head and to be that leader, she's not tripping that you just got laid off, because she, in her own mind, without you saying anything about the situation, she knows that situation is going to be very short-lived because she knows you.
Right.
She knows your hustle. She knows your resolve. She knows that when it comes to you, failure is not an option. And this is a setback for a come up. You see what I'm saying? So when we're talking about provisions being attached to our worth as men, it's all about it. To me, this is my opinion. It all starts with the value and the worth that we put on ourselves. I'm
Yep.
capable of being a homeowner. I'm capable of buying a retirement property. I'm capable of buying my wife a brand new car, even though she didn't ask me for one. I'm capable because even though she didn't ask me, I see a need. And so when I see a need as a provider, I address needs because that's what I do.
Right.
You see, so everything fluidly works with everything. Like everything works in concert. And I think there's no one variable way to look at this whole situation because everybody's situation is different. But when you know you have a good woman behind you that's going to pull you up when you're down, you're going to see results of that. And when you know you're not with the right one, you're going to see results of that. Either way.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely
Either
gonna see
way.
results of that.
I like the way you said the knowing your role, because I think that's as when you embrace the role and you look forward and you get fulfillment from being a provider. It's funny, like you take pride in it, and it becomes like a core essential what you do. You'll always find your way to being that again. You'll
Yeah,
Right.
I agree. And the reason I even use that analogy, Tim, is because I mean, my goodness, I man, I've been in a few relationships where I've had to remind my other half of what my job is. And as a man and as a leader, my job is X, Y, and Z. So now that you understand that my job is X, Y, and Z, let me do my job. Because at the end of the day, I'm not relinquishing my job and my duties to you.
Right.
And if you believe me to be that type of leader that you speak so highly of, pump your brakes a little bit and let me lead. Because how can I prove to you that I can get us where we're trying to go if you refuse to let me lead?
Right.
And I think in a lot of relationships today, so many women out there in relationships want to be the boss.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So many women want to be in charge. And there's there's nothing wrong with compromise, but at the end of the day, like I'm the leader, let me lead. If I say now is not a good time for us to invest money on this over here, let's wait it out.
Right.
And as a leader, if I know that my other half has stronger assets than me, as a leader, I'm obligated to go to her and be like, babe, tell me what you think of this.
Right. I'm obligated to go to your expertise.
Yeah, you're more experienced in this area. What do you think we should do, babe? That's a good leader, man. And when you lead like that, you're never going to have to worry about provisions. Provisions are never going to be an issue because just like the Bible says, do the birds of the field worry about where their next meal is going to come from?
Right.
No, they don't. So if God is taking care of them and they're the fowl of the air and the animals in the forest and the jungle, how much more for us, man? How much more for us? But if you don't believe it, nothing else I say matters.
Right. Well,
absolutely.
and I think when it comes to provisions, it's again, it's this razor's edge that we walk on between roles like masculine and feminine roles, right? Like as a man, this is my role. As a man, somebody breaks into the house and is armed, I have to go and defend us first. And I'm not done defending us until I'm dead or
Absolutely.
incapacitated. Like that is the provision that I am expected of. But you have that provision of me, and then it's like on the other side with women, sometimes I feel like they want to cherry pick the provisions that they want to provide. Because it's
Society
like,
gives them the ability to do that, so that's what they think they can.
yeah, it's like I have an opinion and I can give my opinion and I have good ideas. Yes, you absolutely do. But hey, this person just broke into the house. I need you to take some of those opinions in that self-defense and defend them. They're like, I don't want to do that. Now, I will say, though, that's one of the areas, though, my wife is a very strong person. Matter of fact, I want to bring this in really quick before we get too far from it. My cousin Bobby says, Billy, your wife proved to you that she highly respected the man she married. She knew that you were not going to be lazy and get comfortable. I bet her respect for you grew to a higher level after the layoff. Yeah, because I was buying video games and beating them in like 2 days. And I was like, this is not what I want to do with my time. And then he also says, I had rather dwell with a lion and a dragon than to keep the house with a wicked woman. Escalations. Is that escalations? Oh, Ecclesiastes.
I think,
sorry.
Yeah, I think he's trying to say Ecclesiastes.
25 and 16. It says, this is what the scripture says when you're with the wrong woman. Absolutely. When you're with the wrong person, it's like being in an ocean with a medicine ball attached to your leg, and you can only tread water for so long. But going back really quick, the thing with my wife is when we have conversations, she's like, look, I'm all for like my role as a woman. I'm all for your role as a man. Now, do we have times, because she's a strong woman, where we butt against each other sometimes? Sure, we do. But one of the things that I am noticing, going back to what you're saying, Damien, is learning how to be that leader. And I still struggle. Like, we got into an argument the other day because I was making plans and I didn't come back to her to say, hey, I'm making some changes to our plans. But to me, I'm like, it's hard when you're in this leader role and you're like, but I'm not going to make any plans to our detriment as the leader. And so for me, I'm coming to the conversation saying, hey, do you trust my judgment? Like, do you trust that I have our best interest in mind? So why would I make plans or change our plans in a way that disrupts our best interest? And for her, she's like, I want to be heard. I want to be involved. And I think sometimes with my wife, it's hard because, I've always heard from women, I just want the truth. I want you to tell me the truth. And then I say the truth is, she says, well, when you were having this conversation, did you ever think to even involve me in the conversation? And I was like, clearly based on my actions, I didn't. And even in the moment, I didn't think about, oh, let me stop what I'm doing to go on and talk to my wife to see if this is okay to commit us to. I wasn't in that space. But even in these conversations that we're having, I'm learning part of being the leader is understanding how your people want to be led. So you can have the best intentions, right? I had the best intentions. I was enhancing the trip. It was costing low amounts of money. I was like, I'm going to get you this. Oh, by the way, we're going to get that key lime pie, Tim, in Florida. So,
yeah.
So Tim knows because he was there when we first both had it. But I'm like, I'm enhancing the trip. I'm taking you to a place that I wanted you to experience something. But the other part of that as the leader is you're the person who wants to follow you, the person who desires to follow you is saying, this is going to be helpful for me to follow you. And if you want to be a good leader, then you have to try to figure out how to assimilate that into your leadership methodology.
Yeah, I would tell you this too. It's also, and me and you, I went struggle is the wrong word, but what we deal with similarly with our women or with our women is they're both incredibly independent people that did it without a man for a while. So in their eyes, they're capable of, like, you're not a need, you're an addition to, in a lot of ways, because they could do okay. Is it ideal? Do they want to do it? Obviously not, because they're with us. But they were on their own for so long that they develop a level of independence. And having that time period where those worlds merge does take a little bit of time, and it'll be more seamless as time goes on. But I want to say one thing too, because I know it's a men's circle, but I will say this: I do empathize with a lot of women today, and the reason why I empathize with a lot of women today. It's not like they're getting our best as far as picks of men. There's a lot of no good men out there. There's a lot, and if I want to play my blame game, not blame game, but like my idea of what that is, I think is when You have a lot of single parents raising these men, especially single women raising a young man. They don't get the harsh realities of things. And I've even actually have overheard single mothers tell their sons, "Go find you a woman to take care of you." And it's like,
Mm,
that's the most ass backward thing I ever heard. But okay. So you get these lazy bum men, and these women are so starved for somebody that meets both boxes, good man and provider, that they'll settle for a provider sometimes, and they'll be a sugar mama or sugar baby to a sugar daddy. They'll stay. Like, you see these, like, even in books and movies and stuff, they're like, "Why are you staying with him?" "Well, we have a family and we have stuff together, and basically he provides for me, so I'm sticking around."
right.
So it's not like, as men, as a whole, we're not doing our best as a whole right now. There's a lot of men out there that they don't provide. They wait for somebody to take care of them. When they get laid off, they're like, I'll be on unemployment until it runs out, then I'll start looking.
Right.
Mom, don't touch my orange juice. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Um, they do that. They go and live with the parents, and it's not the end of the world if you live with your parents. But if you don't have a plan on, okay, this is a temporary thing, I'm looking to build towards this, then you're living off your parents. You're back to being a dependent. So
Right.
there's a lot of that going on too. Like, uh, you hear jokes like, the guy coming back to the place, and I thought the furniture looked a little bit old fashioned, and then, but I seen a lot of pictures of his siblings and stuff, and I just thought he really loved his family. Turns out he was taking her down to the basement because that's where he lives, and he's 32. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's just, we're not doing our best. So what do women do? They're gonna treat everybody like they're the worst until you show them that you're
Well,
better than that.
they'll treat everybody like the worst, but I think they'll also be that much more hypercritical about the provisions that you provide and attach that further to your worth as a man.
And
Like,
once you get him and you show them, you see the switch. You're like, oh, I'm not dealing with this run of the mill dude. This dude takes care of stuff. This dude get things done. He's about something.
And you
right,
see, I'm listening to you guys talk, and what we keep coming back to is value and worth. Just like I said in the beginning, it all comes back full circle to value and worth. Because a woman who puts up with a man who is that way, who's a couch potato, who only wants to work when he wants to work or when it's convenient for him, right? A woman who puts up with that and tolerates that doesn't understand her value. She
hmm,
doesn't understand her worth. But a woman who sits her man down and was like, "Okay, babe, you just got laid off your job. I've been thinking about this over the past couple of days. And um, is it okay with you, babe, if I talk to my girl so and so, who's a hiring manager over at Boeing, right? Because your talents would be perfect for what they're looking for right now. Would you like me to set that up?" See, now it's not just her doing something behind his back, making him feel less than. It's a conversation. So he has
right,
the opportunity to say yes or no. That's a woman who understands her role and her value in the role that she has with her man. It all comes back to value and worth. And like the question that Bobby asked a few minutes ago, it went back to exactly what I said about both of your wives. They respect you enough to know that if you go down, it's a man down temporarily, but they believe in you and your ability so much, it's not a hindrance or a burden to the relationship because they know it's just a matter of time before you kick your hustle up and get back on point. You
right.
see, that all has to do with value and worth.
True. Really quick, because he did come in and he said, not Ecclesiastes. I referenced a book of, I don't know how to say this name, it's Ecclesiasticus.
Ecclesiasticus.
Okay,
Yeah.
Ecclesiasticus, which is one of the original canon books or canon books of the Bible. Learned something new today. He also says a good number of single mothers of sons raise the very men they later end up despising. Oh man, hey, that's a whole nother topic. I'm not even gonna go
And circle. Stay tuned, Bobby. Stay tuned.
Part 2.
Right.
And including how they dress them.
Topic.
Dress them just like the one that left.
Yeah, it's like, yo, if you, never mind, I ain't gonna go down that road. I ain't gonna go down because that road right there, I've seen it so many times, and it's like, wait a minute, would you want like your son to put up with somebody like this?
It's a lonely highway, brother.
Yeah. Oh no, dog. The highway. So let's jump over to the next question. The next question that I had that I wanted to come up to is really, like you said, it keeps coming back to value and worth. But as providers, as the men who believe that it is our role to provide provisions, again, I'm going to say to ourselves and to others, what is the top priority as a provider? Because I remember growing up and it was like, you know, if you got some money in your pocket, you can get any girl that you want. If you got this going on, then you can get that. And it was all these things. But I've also seen, especially now, being able to live through that moment and that very short span of time where that was the case. It was like, if you have money and you had a brand new fresh car, if you had a 5.0, females was going to talk to you about something. But that was such a short period of time. And now we're on this other side of period of time where you have men who are making $200,000, $300,000 a year, and they can't find a partner to save their lives. They're like, wait a minute, I was told if I make the money, if I buy the house, if I do the things that show I'm a provider, I'm going to be able to get any girl that I want. And that's not coming to fruition for some of these men. Whereas I've seen men who make less. I mean, shoot, I didn't have a problem dating when I was making $40,000 a year. And I didn't have a problem dating when I was making $5.10 an hour. So it's like, then if that's the case, what is the top priority as a provider? What should we be providing at the highest level? I have my thought, but I'm gonna come after you guys. Share what you guys think.
I think for me, Billy, as a single dad, one of my top priorities is to never allow my kids to go without. You know, when you sit on panels like this and when you have colorful topics like this, it's easy for, you know, everyone who's on the panel to say things that we think the viewer might want to hear, so it'll get a hand clap or a like. I'm just keeping it 1,000. As a single father, my top priority is to make sure me and my son never, ever go without. And when you look at it like that, it's almost like I'm creating, for lack of a better expression, it's like I'm creating a fear. But that fear that I'm creating keeps me committed to my resolve. It's not a fear because I'm fearful. It's a fear that I'm creating to keep a fire lit under me because I know that life can change in the twinkling of an eye. And there's so many people out there moving like they don't understand that concept. Like the example you just gave, a guy can make $200,000 a year, but if you make $200,000 a year and you have a $90,000 car and you renting in an apartment, that's a problem.
Right.
Like your mind, like where's your mindset? What are you planning? What seeds are you planting today for your future? And if you look at how agriculture works, when you plant those seeds, you're not harvesting a crop in 2 weeks because it's payday. Right. That works for payday. Payday was built that way. You do the work, in 2 weeks, we're gonna pay you. But when you plant seeds, you have to cultivate those seeds. You have to nurture those seeds. You have to make sure those seeds are planted in the right soil so that you can have a plentiful harvest when it's harvest time. The very reason why I created a beverage company for my kids 3.5 years ago. Well, when I created that for them, they were only 10 years old. But I have sense enough to know that even though they were 10 years old back then, one of these days they will hit 18, 19 years old. Now, when I hit 18, 19 years old, I was one of them kids who always had my hand out. I need this. I need that. Can I have this? Can I have this kind of car? I want to drive the kind of car my homeboy got. So can you get me that kind of car? So now that they have their own company, they're being made to manage their business on a daily, weekly, monthly basis so that when they become young men and when they become adults, it's harvest time for them. You see what I'm saying? It's harvest time. Now you can go out and get the kind of car you want versus the kind of car I want to buy for you.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So for me, that's a top priority to me, is to make sure at this age in life that they are right now, that I continue to create a blueprint for them to win. Because when they win, I win by default.
What you got, Tim? So that's going without.
It's funny. He went into what I was going to say. Like, I get that this is, if you want to say top priority is to always make sure you've got food, water, clothes, shelter. I get that. So what I'm about to say is I don't make it seem like that supersedes that, but it's preparation, right? Making sure the kids always know one day you're going to have to provide for yourself.
Yep.
One day you're going to have to take care of yourself and maybe a whole family, depending on how you live your life. This is, and then being transparent. We're like, the thing that not to toot our own horns as parents, but one of the things I really like about us as parents is we'll share with them like what goes into the decision-making process of a financial decision. Not because they're our stockholders or anything. We're not explaining our reasoning to them, but because if we show them what the behind the scenes look like, maybe they will help them develop their own thought processes of what goes into this stuff.
Nice.
And then it changes their whole perspective. Like, we did this thing with my oldest a while back, a long time ago when she was living with us, where we had her do a spreadsheet where she did a budget. And we were telling her, what is, look at the average cost of a place. Okay. You want to get your nails done. How often? How much does it cost? Your hair done. How often? How much? And we had her create a budget. And they were like, okay, how much money do you need to make that all happen? And that changed her perspective on, I'll just get a job here. I'll just get a job there. Because, yeah, you can get that $10, $12 an hour job, but you ain't getting none of that.
All right, you ain't getting no nails done.
You'll be sustaining. You know what I mean?
You're getting press-ons.
Right. You'll be in your room till further notice, or homeless. We would never kick them out, but that's like the preparedness, telling them what they could expect, preparing them on, listen, you don't have to get married to a career, but you better start thinking about it, and you better start thinking about what you enjoy doing and how you could make that profitable. Because if you start doing a career that you enjoy, you're more apt to be successful in it, and you're more apt to make a better living in it. Instead of, do you want to be one of these slugs that goes to a job every day that they despise to get to that 2 weeks where they get a paycheck, like you said.
Right.
So you hit on what I was going to say when you were talking about the, preparedness, the beverage company. You got this. You got to start thinking about this stuff, because I'm turning the keys of the kingdom over to you, and you better be ready to drive.
Real talk.
It's that's what it's all about. And if you don't do that, you're no longer really a provider. You're a whale and the guppies underneath you. You know what I mean? What are you really providing? You're just taking care of somebody. It's what's the difference between them and taking care of like a invalid,
Right.
somebody that has a disability. You know what I mean? What's the difference at that point? So the preparation to me is the most important thing, because the thing that we have to always acknowledge as providers, and we have to come to terms with, we ain't always going to be here. And my number one priority is, I want to know in my heart of hearts, if I ever get real ill and I'm going down, that I know my kids know how to take care of themselves, and they're going to be all right. If I can't answer that yes, then none of it else matters, because then I'm going to die even more heartbroken, because I'm like, man, they're probably going to end up homeless. This one's going to end up like this. You
Right.
know,
I prepared you for nothing.
I wouldn't, and then you got to live with that failure, right? Like you got to
Mhm.
live with that. Like my job was to get you ready, and I didn't. So
Right.
that's hard realities to face, and so that's my type. I don't know. I never want to face that reality where I didn't prepare you. Now, what
Right.
you do with that, you're an adult, and that's the tough part about being a parent. Is the analogy I give as being a parent is you start off, your grip is real tight because the kid needs you, and as they get older, you're loosening the grip, and you ultimately got to get to a point where you let them go. Now, what they do with that, you no longer have control over. So, and that's tough. So,
Yeah.
preparation, Billy, in short.
Real quick, Billy, before you go into something else, I want to piggyback on something very powerful Tim said. I don't know if either one of you ever saw this video on YouTube. When you talk about preparation, it's so key, man. It's so key. And we see examples of it every single day, especially on social media. When you look at a lot of these millennials today, who just, you can just tell that the moment they open their mouth, they have no clue. They have no clue, right? Not only do they not have a clue, you can tell nobody's guiding them, right?
Mhm.
And this lady, this young girl was at a restaurant and she was eating. She got the bill and she looked at the bill. Of course, it was high. She calls the waitress back over to the table and she's looking at the receipt and she's basically tells the waitress, excuse me, ma'am, can you take this off of my bill? I did not order a gratuity.
Yeah.
I, I was like, what? She really thought gratuity was on the appetizer menu, I guess. And she was serious as cancer, man. She did not have any inclination that a gratuity was something that went to the waiter or the waitress for the
Mhm.
service she got, you know? And so it goes back to what Tim just said, you know, we have to prepare our children for real life, man. And it don't start when they get 18. It starts NOW right now.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think for me, when I think of the top thing that I provide as a provider, it's integrity, and integrity encompasses provisions from preparation. It encompasses teaching a child how to have the aptitude to manage emotions. And it's interesting for me when I think about integrity. It's because growing up there was such a lack of it, and it wasn't like just like, oh, my parents lacked integrity. They had the, we're taking you to the pool and then we sit outside in the hot ass sun and then don't go to the pool. They had that, but I'm just thinking from the perspective of the world around me. There were so many spaces, there were few spaces of integrity and so many spaces where just integrity was not prevalent in my life. And I think about, had I had some more abundance of integrity in my life, some of the decisions that I would have made coming from a space of poverty. And I remember at one time, I don't know if you were with us or not, Tim, but we went to a little convenience store in our neighborhood, and it was like all of us were from poverty, so it wasn't like we had a bunch of money to spend, but it was like, hey, we're going to have a party, everybody has to steal something, right? Everybody has to take something to bring to the party. And so we go in, I don't even remember what the heck we got. I don't remember if we got.
Shit off the hill. I know. I remember.
Yeah, yep. Okay, then you were there.
Yeah.
So, but it's like everybody had to steal something, and to think about not just the depletion of resources that we had, but the lack of role models for all of us to think that that was a freaking good idea, right? Like, it's a good idea because you want to have a party and you haven't done anything to earn any money for yourself, to go and steal a 2-liter soda or a bag of chips or some candy to have a party with your friends. That's a great idea. But for me, that has been my top priority. And it sometimes, this is how I know it's not top priority, because sometimes it bites me in a way that I know that it's capable of biting me, but I'm willing to take that bite. Like, there's been things, even as a co-parent, that have been extremely difficult for me to say, okay, this person betrayed my trust, this person betrayed this, or whatever it may be, and to have to say, but my kids deserve a present co-parent. They deserve a present father. They deserve somebody who's going to stand on their integrity and not allow the behaviors of another person to change their character, going back to that bag. And so for me, the top thing that I'm always trying to provide is integrity. And that integrity is the example that I set daily, whether it is, getting laid off and getting another job, or if it is saving money so that you could buy assets to leave behind, like whatever that looks like, all of that stuff is encompassed in my integrity and who I am as a person. So when you go back to my wife saying, hey, look, I got your back while you're down, it's because of the integrity to know that I'm not going to just sit there and, like you said, Tim, sit on unemployment until unemployment runs out. In fact, here's the thing. I applied to unemployment because I was like, well, in case something don't happen, I don't want to not have my claim in. So let me put my unemployment claim in. And then it was just like, I had a job before I could they weren't even done processing my unemployment claim. And it was like, I just called them. They were like, hey, you need to fill out this part for the application. I was like, look, I start on this day. Do I need to fill that out? No, you don't. We can just cancel it if you want. Go ahead and cancel it. Like, go ahead and cancel it. But that's that integrity that, yeah, I'm going to prepare. I'm going to prepare to just in case I don't have a job, because I don't want to be like, hey, babe, we're now finally out of money. I'm going to start that unemployment process.
Pride.
Right.
Because now that's pride. That's not integrity. Right.
Right. But because of that, I'm like, no, I'm going to go ahead and start this process. And worst case scenario, we don't need it. And fortunately, that's the best case scenario. Best case scenario, we didn't need it, and we can move on. But in the interim, I'm going to do everything that I can to show my kids what it looks like to have integrity. Even with the decision to buy our house in the midst of being laid off, I had that conversation with my wife, and it took me like 2 weeks to sit with that. Like, is this something I want to jump in? We're going to either eliminate a lot of cash savings that could carry us through this entire year, or we're going to get this house, or we're not going to get this house. And then we'll have that savings as a cushion should things not work out. And I sat with it for 2 weeks. And when I made the decision and said, hey, babe, we're going to go ahead and get the house, she said, are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. Go ahead and start setting up the stuff for the move. She was like, okay. It wasn't like, oh, well, I don't know. You don't have a job. And, she okay. Support you 110%.
Yeah. So that's the thing about that is when you do that, it's thoughtful. When you have, it wasn't happenstance. I said, well, let's just keep going. No, she knew that you thought it through, and having the ability to do that and the integrity to question it. Because the thing about leadership doesn't equal knowing all the answers. That's not what leadership is. Leadership is using the best data that you have to make the best decision possible and gathering that data. Like you said, Damien, hey, my wife is really into real estate. She has a background in real estate. Anything that comes up with a house and rates and all that stuff, hey, talk to me. What do you think about this? This is your domain. You know what I mean? And she has other strengths too that is like, okay, she has a financial background. What's the move? What do you feel? What is the best idea you have from that? So that's the thing I think we get mixed up sometimes, even in like jobs where you see like a supervisor that they can't tell you they don't know, or I'll get back to you, I'll find the answer. Their pride gets in the way and they have to tell you something. They have to make up something on the fly because they think that's what leadership looks like. But that's just a testament to the goodwill you built up and the trust you built up with her, to where she knew that if you said something to her, it was well thought out. It wasn't on offense. So
I agree with that, Tim. And I was just sitting here thinking, man, in the days ahead, I hope somewhere down the line, some woman hears this conversation and knows that what your wife did, Billy, was a demonstration. That was her demonstrating to you that she believes in you. She believes in you. No matter how low of a level you think you might be at, you have a woman, you have a wife under your same roof who sees what your challenges are, who sees what you're faced with, what you're dealing with, and still decides to believe in you. Man, that's worth its weight in gold in a relationship, brother. And it makes your job even easier down the line because you know that you have a wife that is not so downtrodden about the challenges you might be facing because she believes in you that much, that she knows whatever is thrown at you guys as a couple, as a family, she knows you're going to pull the family through.
Right.
That's very commendable, man. That's very commendable.
You know what else you made me think of when you were talking about the $200,000 guy that can't find himself a woman? The craziest thing is because those men don't know what they're looking for. And if you run in a circle where you're running with other people that make that much money, you don't stick out. What are you special? This woman's not used to. She's talking to other men that make that. So what makes you you? And
Right.
when people chase something like you were to your point earlier, Damien, they chase a bag, they catch it. They realize that wasn't what they were chasing all along. They needed those behaviors and they needed that discipline and that structure that came along with it. And when you have that now, it's like, what is it? That's why someone like you never struggled when you make $5 an hour, $40, 40,000 a year, or whatever. You'll never have a problem like that. People like us will never have a problem like that because we won't chase the women that value those things. Period. We're looking for good, women that bring something to the table from a sustenance standpoint. Like, I don't need you. Like, if you're a woman, you make $200,000 a year. I'm not asking you for a handout. Like, I'm not going to be like, hey, baby, buy me this car. That's not how I'm wired. So how much money you make means nothing to me. So
Right.
we know we're gonna reach out and seek women that stimulate us up here. You know what I mean? So
100.
men like that are like, oh, I can't find me a woman. Yeah, where are you looking? Are you looking for women that only want you with what money you have? Then guess what? That's what you're gonna find, bud.
Right.
But when you look for women of substance, sometimes it isn't at those fancy parties where the people with money go. Sometimes you got to veer out your neighborhood and go to maybe that middle class grocery store, and you'll bump into a woman that she's doing everything that she can, and boom, she's in it to win it for the guy you are because you're in her neighborhood. She doesn't think that you make $300,000, $400,000 a year. So to me, it's what do you do? What's behind your provisions? If what's behind your provisions isn't worth the shit, then your provisions will only last a certain amount of time. Because the women, like I mentioned that word equity, and you asked me to explain that, now here I'll finish that point. A woman will put up with it until she don't have to.
Mm.
When you're a good man and you're providing, she'll never think of an exit plan anyway. Because she knows she got a good thing. There's nothing to prepare for. So
That's crazy.
No.
And that gives
they'll hang around until they don't have to no more.
And that gives men like us an opportunity to demonstrate to those women, you're not never gonna find another one of me.
Mm-hmm.
So now you weigh what you think you're looking for.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're right.
That determine your worth
over
time.
Right. And I've seen that where all things being equal, the only difference is the person, right? If we both make $200,000, we both have a $600,000 house, and we both drive $80,000 cars. Great. So all things equal, when the going gets rough and all that stuff disappears, who do I want to partner with?
Contrary to popular belief, women don't like the guy that has money. All of a sudden, whatever you need, baby, I'll get that for you. I'll get that for you, baby. That's good for a couple dates and maybe even a couple weeks. Then it's like, man, I got this dude wrapped around my finger. I don't respect him.
Yep.
The woman has to respect you. And if she feels she could walk all over you, don't matter if you make $200 million. She'll stick with you long enough to where she gets a piece of that and then she's gone.
Right.
That's just how
$2 million's enough for me. I'm out.
Yeah. I got $4 million out this dude. Time to go. I can't tolerate this what they call him nowadays, simp. I can't tolerate this simp anymore. He just does whatever I tell him to. He's a do boy.
Mm. So before we get to, because it's almost time to end, but before we get there, I want to ask one more question, because we talked a lot about leadership, we talked about value, we talked about work, we talked about top priorities, but I think one of the things that is encompassed in all of those things is, at some point, even as a provider, there comes times where we need help, right? Going back to what you said, David, I really like the comment you said about having a wife who knows a friend who's a hiring manager. Because you're not working, they're talking to you, having that conversation with you about, hey, this is somebody we could possibly reach out to create an opportunity to get out of this space that we're in right now. So being a provider, when do we come as the providers and ask for help? Because it's been, for me, it's something that I've asked for help in the past, but it's been something that is like break glass in case of an emergency and the building has to be on fire.
And you have to have an arm on fire.
Mm-hmm.
I've lost 2 of your toes already. It's for men like us who pride ourselves in this thing and living the lives that we live. I would probably argue that you're never most vulnerable than when you need to do this. And when you're vulnerable, that's a state that none of us want to be in. Vulnerability is never a comfort zone. And when you cross the Rubicon where you have to look in the mirror and say, okay, there's nothing else there, what's stopping me from asking for help? And if the answer to that is only your pride, then it's time for you to do the right thing and ask for help. But it should not be like, I think you kind of encompass it perfectly. It's in a case of mercy, break glass. Have you done everything on your end that you could possibly do to not need the help? If the answer to that is yes, sometimes things are out of control. We talked about controlling the controllable. Sometimes something uncontrollable hits you, and there's nothing that you could do to control it on your own. So being able to put your pride aside and understand, did I do everything that I could have done? And if the answer to that is yes, and how dire is the need? Is the need so significant that if we don't do something, it could dramatically change things? Because sometimes it's funny, because we have an air conditioner problem in my house where the air conditioner's out and we got to replace it, which we're in the middle of doing. But during the summer, it went out and didn't have the money to repair it during the summer. And it's like, do we go all crazy asking all these people for help? Or sometimes is a little adversity good for you and kids to grow up in, so they could draw back on that? Remember that time we didn't have the AC for that summer and how crazy it was and how we got through it, and having that confidence stuff that you could get through a tough time. Life isn't always about shielding you from adversity. Sometimes it's healthy to go through it. So is the adversity you're facing significant to where it's going to really alter something? Maybe you're going to lose your house, something like that, where, yeah, you probably need to put your pride aside. That's where I would say is that gauge, is how significant is the need, and have you done everything that you can? And is the only thing that's preventing you from asking for help is pride, then you probably need to start working on asking for help.
Gotcha.
I think for me, Billy, it goes back to something you talked about earlier, when you and Tim were talking about. I think you were talking about sacrifice. You know, how dire is the need? And you were also talking about, you said something, it had something to do with finances. You were talking about finances. Like, I look at it like this. What's going to be worse? Me pretending like I don't need help, or asking for actual help? Which of those two outcomes is going to be worse? And in each question, who stands to suffer worse than me? And it goes, and that ties right into Tim's analogy with the pride. Oh, that's what you were talking about when you were talking about the finances. You were talking about being disciplined with money.
Mm-hmm.
So now this is just flipping this scenario over, because now we're talking about help, right? So just like you were talking about being disciplined with money, as a leader, are we disciplined enough to know when there is an absolute need to ask for help? Having the leadership ability to know that in this situation or in this season we're in right now, something has gone beyond my control. That is when you guys may go to your spouse and be like, babe, you're better in this area than me. What do you think? Do you think we should refinance now, or should we wait 3 more months? Because this is what I'm trying to do, but because of your expertise in the real estate industry, I'm coming to you because I don't know. I'm coming to you for advice in this situation, and I want the best outcome that's going to benefit our family. So should we move or should we wait?
Right.
So just like you apply it to financial matters, leaders have to be disciplined as to when to know when something has gone beyond their control and that they do need that help. And this is why us having the right people in our village is so key, because when stormy weather hits, some people don't know where to turn to. And the reason they don't know where to turn to is because they never took that time to build their village. So there's nobody to go to for help because there's nobody in your village. It's just you and Jesus. You know what I'm saying? So, and help is not the demise of us. It's the right help. That's what's going to help us get over the hump and get back on track to where we're trying to go. And I always believe, in a spiritual sense, I always believe that when the need for help comes to us suddenly in life, God is always going to align us with the right person or the right people so that his will can be done. Because it ain't about us anyway. We're just vessels. And I think when that situation happens, he knows already who to use as a vessel to get us where he wants us or where he knows we need to be. And see, like a true believer, don't worry about help, because a true believer already knows where the help comes from.
And understand that it's been planted there long before you thought you were going to need it. I have
Absolutely.
A really good friend who we always talk about how we didn't know that we would be the types of friends we are today when we first met decades and decades ago. But we are grateful that we didn't have to do all the planning to get us to where we are today. Because if we would have done all the planning, it'd have been like, hey, we fell out of touch. All right, well, then I guess that person's gone and life goes on. But the time at which we fell out of touch was perfect because we were both very immature in that space in our lives. We weren't in a space where we were growing. We were in a space where we were toxic, destructive, chaotic, both of us. And I could see those two things running into each other and causing a great explosion that would have ended that friendship, and it wouldn't be available today. But when we came back into contact, there was a lot of conversation about growth and inspiration and what we see in our futures and all these different things. And it's wild to have these conversations a decade and 2 decades ago, and now be in a space where it's like, hey, remember when we talked about that 2 decades ago, and now you're living that? Hey, remember when we were talking about doing this 10 years ago, and now it's done? Remember we were talking about building a business, now we have one. Like, all these different things come in, but that's that help that was set up long before I could have ever orchestrated it. So I agree with you when you say, and in those times when you need help. Help is an opportunity for deeper connection. I'll use, Tim and I's relationship. We've known each other for about 38 years now, almost 40 years. And there was a time where I was watching my brother struggle, and I was like, yo, he's wilding. And it's funny because I'm like, he's struggling, and I'm picking it up on us playing video games. I'm like, God damn, he's tripping every time we play video games. And we go back and forth, we bicker in video games anyway. But it was different. And it was like, okay, my brother's under stress. And going back to what you said, Tim, at these flip-flops of I'm the main provider, or I'm not the main provider, right? And it was a moment where he was a main provider in his household, and I was like, he's stressed. I'm going to have him come out to Utah and spend a weekend with me. And we did hella fun stuff. Like, we were just running and eating cheesecake and paintballing and just doing all kinds of stuff. And it was a great time. But it's like, it's very rare for another human being to be able to see that you need help and to say, okay, they need help, I'm going to get them the help. And so the caveat is that if I didn't have, that level of sensitivity for Tim in that moment, all Tim would have to do is say, hey, bro, man, I'm overwhelmed. I need a break. What can we do? Video games ain't decompressing like they used to. What can we do? And that in and of itself is enough for me to say, let's figure it out. Let's get some things on the table. Let's work through some problems together. That help for me, and you guys dropped some really, really good nuggets. The moment that I have learned to ask for help for me has been unfortunate that it's been in the moments where I'm imploding, because I have missed that off ramp to ask for help somewhere. If I'm on this freeway, there was a help off ramp, right? There's gas, food, and shelter at this next exit, and there won't be gas, food, and shelter for the next 400 miles.
Yeah.
Hey, you gotta know where your rest areas are, bro.
So now that I've missed the exit and now I have this daunting task of going 400 miles, it's like at mile 350, I'm already on implosion mode. And it's been in those moments where I'm like, okay, I need help. And it's taken a while to get to a space where it's like, okay, I'm not going to wait till I'm imploding. Matter of fact, I'm not even going to wait till it says, okay, gas, this is the last exit. I remember one time I was driving home from work. I was like, I can make it. Got to the stop sign that leads to my street, and it's like about 2 miles away from there. I went to turn, and the car just turned off out of gas. It's like, you knew you needed gas. You were hoping that you could have made it to where you were trying to make it to and get gas later, but there's a sense of urgency there. And so for me, when I've asked for help is during implosion, and I'm really working hard to not be in a space of chaos and chaotic implosion to get to the point to drive me to ask for help. It's a challenge, but at the end of the day, I love what you said, Brother Damien, where you said, I can either ask for help and that's going to lead to an outcome, or I cannot ask for help and that's going to lead to an outcome. And which outcome is worse? Like, that kind of makes it really simple. Well,
major takeaways tonight is that exact sentence. Because I'm going to say something once you're done, Ro, about what I learned from both of you talking about this and this question itself that's kind of blown my mind.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
So, for instance, the question itself, right? Like, that moment when I went out there for that weekend, that was a great weekend. I remember getting on the plane and going home, and I slept like a baby on a nap on that plane ride. It was exactly what the doctor ordered. The funny thing about it is, if you would have tried to talk to me to set that up, I'd have been in denial. I'm good. And my pride would have gotten in the way of that. You worked it out with my wife, and it was told to me what was happening. I just had to show up at the airport because y'all knew that that's how I would have took it. So when you say you had a history of waiting until you're imploding, I think it's a similar thing. I think it's the pride, and I thought about like uh, Pulp Fiction when Marcellus was like, "That's just pride messing with you." You know what I mean? And I think about that all the time. As we were, what that question that you said, Damien, really does is it pride? Is your pride getting in your way? Because which one of these two outcomes is and it's funny because I think about the question like this, Billy, and to you too, Damien. Would you rather be the helper, knowing that's going to cost you, or would you rather be the person receiving the help and you're going to get something out of it?
Yeah.
You'd rather be the helper, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
Which is
I would. Yeah.
Every time.
Which is like insane when you ask like regular people. Like, nah, man. Like, and it's funny, like the same thing that you had where Chastity believed in you when you were, because you weren't taking the layoff lightly. Like, oh no, I'm gonna lay and relax. No, you were. It showed like you were outside your normal mode. You had to get work because you're used to having a career. You're used to doing. You're not used to not doing anything. It's the same thing with the help. It's both of them reside in vulnerability. You don't want to ask for help because that puts you back in that same space of being laid off put you in an emotional standpoint. At least that's how I feel. So it kind of blows my mind how those things are related. We have to understand, and you said this too, Damien, is you have to realize that this sense of control that you prided yourself in having, it's an illusion. You're not really in control. You're at the will of something higher, and you're just the vessel that carries it out. So this conversation is really kind of blowing my mind tonight with that. And
Well, I just want to drop this. I just want to drop one of these last nuggets down in the grease while it's still hot. But I was listening to Billy talk a few minutes ago, man, and it reminded me of a situation I went through many years ago when my twins were born, right? So, and hopefully this testimony I'm about to share will help somebody listening. Because sometimes as men, we think we have to live in this mental space where, like you just said, Tim, on so many occasions, we convince ourselves that we're in control because we're men, because we're leaders. We're the alpha male, right? You can't tell an alpha male nothing. And if you listen to enough DMX songs, you know that real dogs always return with food for the pack, right? So we live our life like that, right? But it took me being one of those people many years ago who needed help. And I really struggled with, am I going to ask or am I going to be still and be quiet? But I had sense enough to know that if I stay still and be quiet, a need is not going to get met. Right. And so I couldn't compromise that need not getting met because it was important for me that need got met. So, but God showed me who to go to. So when I went to this person, sat down and explained my situation, everything was fine. But when it came to the actual moment where I had to fix my mouth to ask for help, oh man, it felt like grown men were just standing on my chest. I couldn't breathe. Right. And so I got so overwhelmed with having to swallow my pride and ask for the help that I became extremely tearful. I could barely get the request out. And when the dust settled, I just remember this gentleman saying to me, Damien, in my experiences, the time to really cry like that is when you come to the realization that there's no one to turn to. But you have somebody to turn to, and you're going to get the help that you're asking for. So not only did I get the help, I got above and beyond what I asked for. You understand? Sometimes the battle seems too big for us to win. because we only looking at ourselves. But when you start looking at your village, man, if everybody in the village do what they do best, when God pricks their heart to do it, everybody gonna win. Everybody gonna get blessed some kind of way. Just for coming to the aid of that one person, everybody in the village gonna get blessed.
Right.
You see? And so I just wanted to share that because there's a lot of men out there, man, who won't humble themselves enough to ask for that help. It's not about being macho. It's not about being such an alpha male that you let your children starve. You see, it's knowing when as a leader to say, this is bigger than me. I must seek help for a greater benefit. And the benefit wasn't even because of me, but I knew I had to be the one to get the snowball rolling.
Right.
And I'm just grateful, even just talking about it today, I'm grateful that God had those people in place that I knew and felt confident that I could go to with this issue who could help give me a push.
It's just the question itself is so funny because there's so many, fortunately, there's so many men out there that they don't even understand this question because they will ask for help for anything. And I think that's kind of like the kind of like the similar thing, right? Like your wife was confident in you when you lost your job because you knew you wouldn't lay around long. If you went to anybody for help, they'd be confident in you because they know you ain't doing it. Like if you're coming to me for help, I know it's important because you wouldn't do that. And then there's
Right.
the people out there that ask for help because they're overdrawn because and they want to get their Chick-fil-A for the week. You know what I
Right.
mean? So there's people that have very low
Help bars.
bars, right? And people are like, oh, here's this person. I gotta help this dude again or whatever. And then when they, oh man, what happened? You must really need it because you definitely wouldn't be coming to me. It's it's never as bad as we feel internally, probably when we think that through. Like how you said, it felt like a whole bunch of men standing on your chest. The person that was looking at you across the aisle, like, man, you wouldn't be here if this wasn't absolutely dire. You don't have to explain yourself to me.
Yeah, yeah,
Because you
yeah,
built up that equity with them. You've shown them over time what
yeah,
type of man you were. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of men that show you who they are over time, and it's like, I don't know if I should be helping this person. If I help this person, he gonna be back here in 2 weeks.
Right.
Is he gonna be running down the opposite aisle in the grocery store when because he don't got my money? That he said he'd pay back. Like it's just really, it's funny that the people that are probably most trustworthy to make it right feel as bad as they do to ask for the help in the first place. But the people that have no intention in making things right have no fear of asking. It's just funny how that works.
Yeah. Well, we are at time. Before I get into the takeaways, because there was tons of takeaways tonight, but final thoughts, gentlemen. Final thoughts.
My final thought, Billy, is thank you, brother. My final thought is thank you for the men's circle, man. And I'm not even speaking just on me. I'm speaking for all the men who have been on it. I'm speaking for all the men who have helped facilitate it. I'm speaking on all the men who have made a decision and an effort to tune in. Thank you for the men's circle, brother, because listening to us talk tonight, I was just sitting here in my thoughts thinking to myself how successful all three of us could have been much sooner in life if our fathers did what we're doing right now.
Yep.
It's needed, man. So keep it up.
For sure. Appreciate you.
My final thought would be just, it's funny how life is kind of like a cruel joke. But what I mean by that is you gain wisdom, but by the time you're old enough to use it, the body's usually not as able as it once was. Because it's funny you say that, Damien. If I did have some older person telling me this stuff and trying to drop these jewels of knowledge on me when I was 17, I would have been like, man, dude, you don't know. I know what I'm doing. And I would have been really prideful with that. And I would have got my, teeth kicked in by life, as life is undefeated. And then I would turn to the man, you know what, you were right. And my window of acceptance with that would have been shorter. You're 100% right on that. But in the moment, if I had somebody mentoring me, I would have resisted that just because I was a knucklehead. But that's, to me, it's interesting. The more and more and more, and I agree. Thank you, Billy, because these conversations always leave me with reflection on what I've been through and what I've done, and also vision on what's to come, on what I can do with this. So it's kind of like a two-way street. But it's really interesting how all these things are related together. And if don't worry about the end result, it's the journey, not the destination. And that's what I've been getting at as I get older. I heard all these like sayings that sound real catchy and sound like they look really good on a painting in somebody's bathroom, right? It's the journey, not the destination. But then you start thinking, okay, this is what that person meant when they said it. And this is how they can make it as succinct as possible for some knucklehead to maybe get it one day. And I'm learning that stuff with more and more of these sayings that is going on. And that's kind of like my feeling tonight is it's all about the journey. And the destination is usually, once you get to the destination, it's over, and you hope you left behind people that could do what they could do, and they could take care of themselves. They could be providers and sustain life without you. So those are my final thoughts, man.
I like that. It makes me think about Hansel and Gretel, and thinking about when you're doing the life journey. You're right. By the time you look up and realize it is about the journey, most people, life is over. It's too late. It's on their deathbed. Shit, it was about the journey, right?
Right.
but if you're constantly dropping those breadcrumbs as you're doing your journey, regardless if the birds eat it or not, you left some kind of data point, some kind of information for others to be able to pick up and follow when the timing is right for them. Because you're right, when you're young, you know everything, so it's hard for somebody to pour into you. But I will say, I have noticed with my older son, he is coming back to me faster than I will ever go back to my father. He's 21, and he's already coming back and saying, Dad, I have these questions. Dad, you were right about this. Dad, you told me to do it this way, and I did it this way, and it worked. To the point where his friends are starting to call me. I had one of his friends call me a couple months, maybe a month or so ago, and he called me, and I'm like, something up with my son, because why would your son's friend call you?
Right.
But he called me. He was like, "Hey, Pops, I'm dealing with some stuff. I wanted to get some advice from you." And then we fast forward 2 months later. He's like, "Hey, Pops, you were right. Like, I really should have been focused on what you were telling me to focus on. And because I did that, here's the outcome that I got." And again, that is happening faster because there's somebody there in that space, and that person happens to be me. Whereas I think for all of us, most of us as young men, especially in the generation we're from, our fathers were burnt out. You either had a burnt out father, a tweaked out father, an absent father, an angry father. Like, there weren't very many, like, just a positive, loving father. Like, I just the other day grabbed my youngest son and was like, "Hey," I think he was just coming back from the bathroom, and I just gave him a hug. I was like, "Hey, I love you, son." Like, those are things that my father didn't do. I mean, I think my father told me when I was young that he loved me, but there was no like distinct memories that I have where he was like, what, son, I love you.
Right.
Like, there's none of those memories in my data bank. So for me tonight, the final thought about provisions and being a provider, I think both of you hit it extremely well on the head when it comes to value, worth. And Tim, you said, oh shoot, I just lost it. You said something with a P.
Planning.
Was it planning? No.
Yeah.
Preparation.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. I was like, it's like that, the preparation, value, worth, and preparation. So with that, I do want to give the quick takeaways from the night. Number one, because we started on this journey with me talking about, remember that you need provisions too. Often we think as men, as providers, our role is to have this output that goes externally, but we also have an output that needs to be resonating or recycling within ourselves as well. Takeaway number two is provisions are a humble experience. Damien, you said that. You were saying about my humility, but the reality is provisions are a very humbling experience because provisions are not exciting. They're not fireworks, right? It's not like, oh man, I saved 10 cans of beef stewed tomatoes. Woo, that's exciting. No, it's like I got 10 cans of beef stewed tomatoes and now I have 10 meals of spaghetti that I can make. And none of that stuff is exciting. It's a very humbling experience. And being able to operate in that humility and being able to operate in that humility consistency actually leads to the greater provisions later on down the road. Key takeaway number three was provisions are men's currency in the world. I believe, Tim, I think you said that. It's our currency that we have in the world. And so it's natural for us to want to attach currency to value and worth, right? That's natural for us. But understand that those provisions are not just what you provide monetarily. It's not just because you can give money or just because you can provide shelter or just because you can provide food or safety. It's not just those things, but it is very much attached to our currency as men in the world. Number four, provisions are always tied to value and worth. Brother Damien, that was something that you said, and they are. If food, let's go back to the granary. If I store bread unpreserved in a granary, it's going to go stale and it's not going to be worth anything. But if I preserve it or wrap it or take all the air out of the granary so it doesn't get stale, now all of a sudden it's tied to that value and that worth. And that's what provisions are. It's not necessarily that it has to be tangible things, but there does have to be some type of value or some type of worth, both externally and internally. Going back to that car that takes diesel gas and you're trying to put unleaded gas in it. Yeah, I'm sorry, you're going to break that vehicle down immediately when you go driving for about 5 minutes. Your vehicle's going to catch on fire. So we're like, that's not what you were supposed to give me. And the same way for ourselves internally, our provisions for ourselves should have a succinct value and worth to us and add to us. I will add that and add to us. Key takeaway number 5 is provisions are a consistent process. Again, going back to that humility aspect, it's consistency. And going back to that conversation I had with my wife, where when you zoom out on our relationship, we have a phenomenal relationship when you zoom out on it. When you zoom into the nuances and the arguments and the disagreements, in those small moments, it seems like our relationship is like horrible. It's like, oh my God, why are we in this thing, right? But when you zoom right back out, you see that one dot of disagreement or contention is surrounded by love, support, belief, embrace, help, and all the other wonderful things that embody a healthy relationship. So realize that provisions are a consistent process. So just because you're stuck in a moment where you might have some lack or some your provisions might lackluster, take time to zoom out and see if that is consistent. Because if it's consistent, then there's something that you might need to do to change the mental provisions that you're providing internally. But it, like going back to what you said, Brother Damien, chasing the bag, and you've sacrificed so many of your so much of your character that now you're just getting low quality, low vibrating people in your life and low quality, low vibrating results in your life. Be willing to make that zoom out and see if it's consistently that, or if it's just that zoomed in moment of that. So provisions are a very consistent process followed by trend analysis.
Yes, sir.
Key takeaway number 6 is pride will always veer you away from help. Tim, immediately when you start talking about pride and when to ask for help, I immediately was like, man, every time I have been reluctant to get help, it has been my pride that has steered me away from it. it has been my pride that it says, no, you're Billy Rowe. You'll figure that out on your own. You don't need help. You got it. And though that can be admirable in doses, but it cannot be admirable in every situation, because that brings me to the key takeaway, and the final takeaway for number 7 is know when something has gone beyond your capabilities. It is going to hurt me more if I'm sorry, is it going to hurt me more if I ask for help or not ask for help? That was from you, Brother Damien. That's the other part of that, is when your pride is veering you away, take that moment to put a stop loss in place to say, hey, look, is this really beyond my capabilities, or am I just kind of saying I don't want to do it? Okay, is going to Chick-fil-A this week, is that something I really need to borrow money for? Or is it something that I can live without and then just do it when I get paid, right? But once you identify that it's going beyond your capabilities, now it's like, okay, what's the collateral damage on both sides of this coin? If I ask for help, number one, I think for us as men, the very first thing that we're worried about is I'm going to ask for help, and then now one of two things are going to happen. They're either going to reject me and say, no, I'm not going to help you, which now makes me feel like my worth and what I've invested in the relationship is not of value. Or two, they're going to help me and they're going to tell everybody that they had to help me, right? And for us as men, either way, neither one of those are good circumstances for us. But if the caveat is those are one of the two circumstances, and the circumstance where they help me and they tell everybody gets my kids fed, then why am I delaying asking for help and prolonging my children's ability to eat over, like you said, that pride? So know when something has gone beyond your capabilities. Understand that pride is always going to veer you away from help, but ask yourself, is it going to hurt you more to ask for help, or is it going to hurt more to not ask for help? So that's what I had as the takeaways tonight. Man, I appreciate you guys all being here this evening. Big brother Damien, big brother Almighty. Appreciate you tuning in with us.
Yes, sir.
That's all I got for the night, man. Until the next time, if you like this video, share it. If you share this video, please like it. Always happy to engage with you in the comments. Always happy to engage with you in the live chat. Thank you for the men who were in the live chat tonight. But until the next time, we're 2 Tuesdays out. See you guys in another 2 or 14 days. That is the 20th of February. Until the next time, one love, peace, and God bless. Thank you for sitting on the first row.